What is going on, fight fans? So today we're going to do something special. Today we're going to talk about the difference between a boxing game and a fighting game. Technically, it could be a combat sports game and a fighting game, but there's really only two of those, and the majority of what I've played throughout my life is boxing games. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So recently I've been getting into fighting games, especially starting last year with Street Fighter 6. Before Street Fighter 6, I've only played Street Fighter 2. Believe it or not, I didn't play any other fighting games. That's why a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Steve has been in Tekken since Tekken 2 or 3. How are you just now knowing this? Because I literally not played fighting games since Street Fighter 2 when I was a little kid, just against my brother. Nothing competitive when it comes to fighting games. However, with boxing games, I've played a lot of those, right? I've actually competed in boxing game competitions run by EA, for example. The Virgin Gaming competition, I made it to the semifinals in Fight Night Champion run by EA. The official tournament that happens normally when Fight Night drops. There's an official EA tournament. In the Fight Night Champion one, I made it to the semifinals. In the Fight Night Round 3 one, I was the regional champion. Didn't do the competition for Fight Night Round 4. In EA MMA, I was in the semifinals by the EA competition run called Mystic Force, I believe. Mystic Force, and made it to the semifinals in that one as well. So didn't win any of them, but made it very, very far. Also, if you want to know what's the best boxing game ever, I will have the link to that video here. A video where I compile a tier list of all the best boxing video games. If you've ever wanted to play them, that's my understanding of which ones are good and which ones are bad, which actually will be over here somewhere. But let's talk about the differences, because now I'm understanding fighting games little by little. Not crazy, but I'm understanding fighting games little by little. I've made it to Masters in Street Fighter 6 using Rashid, and I'm starting to play now Tekken, right? One thing that's beautiful about fighting games is that a lot of the skills from fighting games, which is basically understanding frame data and when it's your turn and things of that nature, and spacing, and basically the footsies game, the way it works in fighting games is transferable between different fighting games. I've tested this because I've also played some Guilty Gear after Street Fighter 6 just to strengthen my Street Fighter 6 knowledge, right? So I was like, oh, let me play a different fighting game and see if any of this stuff has transferred over well, and it did. I was doing pretty okay with Guilty Gear as well. Not that I truly really played it. I only played like a few matches just to see that that I can kind of carry this over into a different fighting game. But Tekken, I've dived head on with Tekken. So what are the differences between the two? There are some major differences with boxing games and with fighting games. I do not believe that somebody who is really good at fighting games would be really good at a boxing game. I do not believe that. I think that they are completely super separated from each other. The same way, I do not believe somebody just simply being good at a boxing game will make them good at a fighting game. They are completely separated from each other, but they carry some similar elements to it. It is still fighting. You are still trying to hit your opponent while also trying to ensure that your opponent doesn't hit you, or you're mitigating as many times as your opponent hits you while trying to maximize as many times as you can hit your opponent to drain their life bar. But the differences are jarring. For example, with boxing games, it is low stakes in every given situation. And what do I mean? One punch that you land, regardless of the punch, is its own punch. It is isolated. Nothing special comes from that punch. Nothing extra comes from that punch. It doesn't do anything different other than it simply lands, right? It doesn't matter if it's a super powerful punch or a jab. It simply lands. And why do I say this when it comes to fighting games? Because with fighting games, you can do what is called a hit confirm, where the landing that specific punch or attack can now link you into this unbreakable combo that you can take that person for a ride and start draining health. While with boxing, there's never a guaranteed combo. You are working for every little hit that you do in a boxing game. If you throw a combo, it is always unsafe because somebody can hit you in the middle of that combo. As opposed to in a fighting game, if you have a true combo, you can do combos that are unsafe, obviously, where somebody can interrupt them, but a true combo is not interruptible. So you can just go on for as long as you want. With that being said, it is less exciting on a moment-to-moment basis because of that element. With boxing, every attack is low stakes. Just because I can't combo or just because you can punish doesn't mean that the fight is over. The fight can be far from over when it comes to boxing. While in fighting games, the stakes are so much more higher, because if I land that hit confirm that will start that combo string, that's a big deal because I can take off 40% of your life, right? If you only have 40% of your life left, that could be game over. So you have to be very cautious when it comes to fighting games, and you have to be cautious, but not to a high stakes degree when it comes to boxing games, which is why you see people engage much more easier when it comes to a boxing game or a combat sports game, as opposed to a fighting game where you'll see a lot of this kind of stuff where people are just simply not engaging. The reason they're not engaging is because they technically just don't want to, because the moment somebody lands something that connects into something else, they're going to be at an extreme life advantage as they drain your health down to 30 to 40% off of a combo. So that makes it much more easier to watch and enjoy for the casual fan, and the stakes are much higher for the competitive player. Also with boxing games, it mimics the sport itself. So the fights are going to be pretty long. Now you can have a knockout happen, that is a possibility, but there's more than likely going to be a knockdown in a boxing game, and from that you can get up and continue the fight. You do have a health bar in boxing, but it doesn't work in the same way as your health bar does in fighting games. It isn't the sole thing that you're managing consistently, and that is the be all end all, that if that drains, you're done. Normally it cannot drain to zero. You can only drain to a really low level, and then you're in a dangerous place. But you could win without ever fully draining somebody's health bar down, simply on the points of landing your punches or being more aggressive or making your opponents miss. A combination of all of those things can net you a win based off of a judging system that happens in boxing games or combat sports games. There is no judging system in fighting games. You either win by winning by defeating your opponent, or you win because the time runs out and you have a life lead. There are also a bunch of other stuff that you see in boxing games that are different than in fighting games. Grabbing, for example, is just clinching, and normally it's just a way to stop your opponent from hitting you and killing some time. While in fighting games, a grab is a 50-50 move where it's trying to mix your opponent up from the rock, paper, scissors of low attack, high attack, grab, where they have to make a decision between those three things. Boxing games normally have what's called an illegal move that can do some damage, but is actually illegal to perform. And if you do too many of them, you could lose the fight because of that. You could also lose the fight in many combat sports games via damage, like a cut. So there's a lot of little things that you're managing on an overall large scale that in each individual moment, they don't matter, but they matter because in the overall scale of the entire fight, eventually it will matter a lot. So each individual moment, the stakes are low as opposed to in fighting games. But each individual moment still matters in a boxing game because eventually those things will start to add up, and then you will get to a point where it's detrimental to you winning or losing the fight. There are other things that are different in boxing games and fighting games. I could go on forever, but they're both, to me, super exciting in their own way, and they share a lot of similarities. This is one of the reasons why I can play so well, or I'm doing good for a person that's relatively new. Well, not super new, right? I've played Street Fighter 6, but just a quick understanding of going into the game with Tekken when it comes to playing with Steve Fox. Because in fighting games, there are some things that carry over from combat sports games or from boxing in general. And that is the jab, for example, being the safest, fastest thing that you can throw, being a thing that you can shoot out to be able to get closer, right? People throw punches or jabs to kind of poke, right? To test what's going on, to get a reaction from your opponent. And that's something that you do also in fighting games. The fact that they purposely made it a certain frame data, for example, in Street Fighter, a jab is 4 frames. And that is the fastest frame attack that you can throw. In Tekken, the fastest frame attack that you can throw is a 10 frame attack. And the jab is normally that 10 frame attack. This is symbolic to boxing, where the jab is the safest and the fastest thing that you normally can throw in the sport. And it helps lead into other things. If you start off with the jab, you can start creating openings other places. For example, if you're throwing a jab in a fighting game, the person is going to get annoyed by the fastest frame attack, and they might end up doing something dumb in anticipation that it's another jab coming. They might not want to jab with you. They want to throw something else to see what they can get out of you consistently throwing the jab. And because you're understanding that this is where they are mentally, you can then at that point decide to do something even more powerful, and it was all led through the jab. Or you could close the distance safely using something like the jab. I do it all the time in Tekken with Steve Fox. Fighting games does have an edge in complexity, however, as normally in boxing games, everything is mapped out. The jab is mapped out, the straight is mapped out, the uppercut, and all of that, you just create your own combo at any given moment. There isn't a specific combo for every fighter. You just make whatever combo you want to make and know that every punch you throw is essentially unsafe and can be countered at any point. So it makes landing these crazy combos a little bit more impressive when it comes to boxing games, in my opinion. But it's much more complex because you actually have to, almost like learning an instrument, learn the combo flow and get it locked into your muscle memory so that you could pull it off in a fighting game. Those are the differences between a boxing game and a fighting game. To me, I'm enjoying both of them, right? I love boxing games Been playing them since I was a child, primarily playing boxing games since I was a child and even into my adulthood. But I'm now loving fighting games because although at first when I was younger and I was playing all these boxing games, I never could get myself into a fighting game because I felt that it was too far removed from the ideals of boxing. But as I started playing even Street Fighter, I started realizing that they carry a lot of similarities. And really, it was more fear of not understanding the complexity of the game that kept me from the game. But once I dived deep into it, I realized, yes, it is complex, but it is also incredibly rewarding. It is really good to know that with the same tools that you had from day one, with nothing special, nothing extra, no added, gun that you've unlocked, no added superpower, with the same exact tools that you had, you are now 10 times, 20 times, 30 times better than you were when you first started playing. That is just absolutely rewarding. And when you get all the combo flows together and you get all the reads and you're able to get into the mind games and get people to do stuff, like you bait something specifically and it triggers on the other side and then you just launch into a combo because that happened, it's very hard to replicate the excitement of getting something like that to happen in a boxing game, for example. So they all both have their pros and cons, but now I'm realizing the value and the excitement of playing a fighting game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully this was a unique take from somebody who's been super into boxing games all my life, who is now getting super into fighting games as well. Hopefully this enlightens some people. And maybe if you are a fighting game fanatic, maybe you want to try out boxing games, right? You never know. It's different. I still stand on the fact that I don't think the best fighting game players can be good at combat sports games. They're just so different. There's similarities, but they're so different that I think that a person who's really good at combat sports games will always beat a person who's really good at fighting games, and of course, vice versa. All right, until the next one, guys, peace out. Got him. Come on, careful. Go low. No, go uppercut. Go low. Let's go. Clean them up.